Hello, how are you? Just wanted to touch base. Wanted to talk a little bit about self-love and oftentimes the boundaries that we set in place in order to enforce that. And there's so many different ways that we can talk about that. So I'll probably talk more on it in future videos as well, because I want to try and keep my time down a little bit. But before I even get started, my son has been educating me a little bit about YouTube. And he said that in order to, my whole reason of doing these videos on YouTube was to have more, or give people more access, okay? Because not everyone's on Facebook, and I was doing like live streams, well, not live streams, but I was doing videos on Facebook and putting it out publicly. But I think YouTube has a wider reach, if you will. And in any case, like I've said, not everyone's going to find these videos helpful, but for those that do, it helps when, if you think it would be helpful to someone then share it with them. And that's something that people can more easily do through YouTube versus like a Facebook platform. At least that's what I've been told. I don't know how true that is, but in any case, that's why I initially came over here. Plus it kind of centralizes them versus spreading them out over time periods and everything else. So with that being said, he was telling me that the way the algorithm works is the more people who subscribe or like the videos, the more they'll be distributed. So if you subscribe to the channel, then that helps with moving the videos around, I guess. And then if you like the videos, and then if you, as far as the bell, if you click that, all that does is give you faster access to when the videos are up and ready to go. I'm not sure if that does anything either. But in any case, that's only if you find them helpful and you think other people could benefit from them, then that will help to spread them throughout and maybe get a wider reach as far as allowing people to see them and access them. You do you. I'm just putting that out there because that was recently brought to my attention. In any case, self-love. So it's kind of self-explanatory, but easier said than done. I think we all are born with some level of self-love in the sense that we try to protect ourselves. We try to take care of ourselves, avoid things that could potentially put us at harm. And that comes from a place of, I'm trying to, live here. I'm trying to live my best life, or whatever the case may be. But true self-love is deeper than that, okay? And it's something that we could spend our whole life working towards, okay? It's kind of like a relationship. The hope is that if you've been together for years, that you love each other more than you did to begin with, because the more you get to know each other, the more you grow together, the more that bond deepens. Sadly, that's not often the case. However, that is the hope. And the same thing goes with ourselves, but in the same sense, it's not always the case, because sometimes as we've maybe made perceived wrongs in our life, or wrong choices, if you will, we tend to judge ourselves more harshly and maybe create these toxic belief systems that hold us in a self-imposed prison, versus the opposite, which is I made the best choice I could make at that time, given what I had at my disposal. And now I have to kind of release that, come to terms with it, learn from it so that I can move forward. And that's a theme that I've gone over several times in these videos. But it's so true, because oftentimes, depending on the level of disdain that we may have for the choices that we made, we find it hard to see that we're worthy of moving forward, or worthy of being happy even. Sometimes people will put themselves through pain and make intentional choices or engage in intentional behaviors that are self-punishing. because they feel so bad or so guilty or so angry at themselves for choices that they made, right, wrong, or indifferent. And it's not even about judging those choices, because that's the thing. What's right for one person isn't necessarily right for the next person. So I'm not even talking about those inherent rights and wrongs. I'm talking about our perception around our own lives, okay? And the reason why self-love is so important is because the happier you are with yourself, the more at peace you are with yourself, the more in balance you are with yourself, then the more impactful you're going to be with regards to positivity within your environment, okay? I love this saying. It's not mine, but I use it all the time. It says, we don't often see the seeds we plant grow into trees. We don't know what the smile or holding the door for somebody, how that impacts them throughout the day, right? Sometimes all people need is a smile. I remember a memory. I'm not going to say who the people were, but I was young, and I remember someone saying to me, it was a difficult time in their life, and they said, Tara, I'm gonna try one more time, but if nobody smiles back at me, I give up. And personally, I think it was an angel. But in any case, that very next person that they smiled at and said hi, that person lit up and was so engaging and so happy and so kind and so loving that it turned that person around. It gave them hope. So we don't know. And we see memes like that that say, you don't know the struggles that people are going through, so always put forward kindness, because it does make an impact. But we don't know. It's kind of like some toxic behaviors. We don't know what's happening inside our bodies. So sometimes we ignore the fact that, oh, well, if you think of something like smoking or whatever, well, I'm not dead yet, so I'll have another cigarette or whatever. And I'm not judging anyone who smokes. I'm just using that as an example, is oftentimes out of sight, out of mind, right? If we can't see it tangibly, we don't think about it. That's not always the case, but especially if it's a behavior that we think we're benefiting from for some reason. So with regards to like smoking, obviously, if there's an addiction, a lot of times people smoke because they're anxious. However, what they don't realize is that nicotine goes a long way to create more anxiety long term. So it's like a vicious cycle, if you will. I'm not getting into the pros and cons of smoking. I'm just using that as an example of, because we don't see our lungs, or we don't see the inside of our esophagus, or we don't see those things, we don't often think about it, of what is the long-term impact. We just go by, well, I haven't been told that I have to stop yet, so be it. And you can say that about any toxic behavior. And we all have them to some degree, some more than others, I guess, depending on how much someone's trying to control their environment. You know, usually when it's a strong control factor behavior, you know, like an eating disorder or something like that, that usually comes from a form of anxiety, but just on a more intense level. Same with OCD. It's a level of anxiety, because I'm trying to control this aspect of my life because maybe everything else seems so out of control, or maybe I can't stop someone from abusing me, but I can control what I eat, or I can control who I push away. You know, you think of toxic responses, if you will. You know, sometimes if someone triggers someone, maybe you have abandonment issues from childhood or other, you know, depending, everyone's different. Sometimes people have different responses to that. Either they become anxious attached, right, which is the ones that have to know where you are at all times, and when are you coming home, and text you like 500 times when you're away or whatever. I've never had like that, anyone do that with me in my life, because I don't think I would have the patience for that outside of therapy. But I know people who have had people like that in their life. And again, I'm not judging. It's there for a reason, right? It's obvious there's some healing that needs to be done there. And then you have avoidant attachment, which is you triggered me, I'm going to push you away before you get the chance to push me away. So I might pick a fight with you. I might just ghost you or ignore you, or I might do this or that, whatever the case may be, that removes you from my life. And then depending on my situation, I may then punish myself further because I regret it. But I was doing it out of self-preservation. And again, oftentimes I'll talk to people, and as they learn new skills, they might then go down that rabbit hole of regret and say, if I only knew that then, I would have made other choices. I'm like, you can't. You can't go back in time. You didn't know that then. So we have to trust, and that's part of that self-love, that you did the best you could at that time. And it may not have been what was right for you in the long run, but it was right for you in the moment. And that's all you can do with it. And now learn from that so that you can make other choices moving forward. Because if you truly regretted that behavior, like if you truly regret that behavior, and oftentimes we do, depending on the situation, then when that same situation or scenario, maybe with someone different, but when that arises for us, let's consciously make a different choice so that we're not recycling the same lessons, right? So part of self-love is recognizing these toxic traits within ourselves so that we can create more harmony within ourselves through making more discerning choices that are self-serving. And when I say self-serving, I don't mean at the expense of other people. I'm just saying we're only going to be as good for other people as we are for ourselves. If we're already taxed, if we're already miserable, if we're already emotionally vulnerable, how are we going to put our best foot forward within relationship dynamics? We're not. We might try and work with what we got. It's kind of like going to work sick, right? It's not going to be my best work. It's not going to be my best day, but I'm going to try and I'm going to give you what I got, right? And sometimes that's enough. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's learning, okay, when do I need to take a step back? When do I need to invest more? When do I have to go a little deeper and do the hard work so that I can purge this and heal it finally, so that it stops coming up for me within all similar dynamics? And we see this play out so much, especially in relationships, okay? And that's why boundaries are so important, because when it comes to self-love, it's that being there for yourself as you would for other people. It's the recognizing when we're being manipulated within relationship dynamics. It's recognizing, and we're not always going to get it right, but it's prioritizing yourself enough to be willing to notice, right? We don't own other people's behaviors. We only own our own. So if you're not feeling well, it's up to you to take a step back, take a day off, relax, instead of trying to do for everyone else or whatever the case may be. Everyone's different. Again, these are general. If I really am excited about something, then it's up to me to be motivated enough to pursue it, right? If I'm not feeling well, it's up to me to take the necessary precautions or to do what I need to do in order to heal myself. And that can go physically, mentally, emotionally, right? There's all different levels of unwellness as far as wellness. And then when we recognize that we feel good by taking those steps, it's owning it, right? It's saying, I did that for me. And I didn't harm anyone in the process either. Most self-love acts are not going to put anyone else in harm's way. Sometimes, depending on the toxicity of the relationships we have, people will tell us that it puts them in harm's way and that if something bad happens to them, it's our fault. You know, like if you, if, well, if we're thinking relationships, let's think of like toxic. If you leave me and I end up getting hurt or something, then that's on you. No, it's up to everybody to make the choices they need to take care of themselves. Yeah, the exception obviously is our pets, you know, our children, our elders that we're, you know, caregivers for, whatever the case may be. And then of course, depending on your job, then the people that you're responsible for, right? If you're a doctor, you're not gonna, I mean, you're gonna put your patients in high regard because you want to make sure they're taken care of because they're trusting you. That's part of your role. But there's still boundaries that need to take place there. So boundaries go a long way with self-care, self-love. But at the end of the day, self-love, and I'll get into more of the things that we can do to help build that, but self-love is that belief system that, you know what, I deserve it too. And I'm not talking I deserve $1 million, but why not? But it's the, I deserve to be loved as much as I love others. Now, if you're not someone who loves people, you know, take it as it is. I'm just, you know, again, generalizing here. But most people that get caught up in those toxic dynamics are the ones that care. I care about people, so sometimes I overextend myself for people so that they feel good. At what expense, though? Because if it's at your own health expense, then you have to take a step back and reevaluate that, because you're only going to be as good for others as you are for yourself. So part of self-love is selfless, because the more I value myself, the more I'm going to be able to show up in a positive way for those around me. So I guess that's my little spiel on self-love. I'll probably, like I said, make more videos on more specific examples and things that we can do to get to that place where we do value ourselves, especially if you come from a place of neglect or abuse where you've been made to feel invalidated and undervalued, and that you know, end up in a codependency where you feel you have to earn love, or that all of your self-appreciation comes from external feedback or sources, because that's not self-love. That's dealing in more toxicity, but I'll talk about that more at another time. But as far as this goes, self-love is very important. It does not make you selfish. It actually makes you more selfless when engaging appropriately. Okay? So I hope you have a good night, and I'll talk to you soon, probably more on this topic, because it has been a theme that's been coming up a lot. Because the more we can, much like I said, feel stable and balanced within ourselves, the less external events are going to rock our world, right? And there's a lot of rocking going on right now. And I'm not trying to make light of it, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. It has been for a while now. And I think a lot of people are struggling with that and finding their own way and trying to figure out, okay, what impact can I have? And again, the impact that we can have starts with self. Because the happier I am, the more I can spread that. And I won't always know the impact that that has down the road. But putting out positivity is only going to beget more positivity, versus when I sit there and if I'm going to sit in a waiting room or something and just complain to people about all the things I can't stand, well, that's just spreading negativity. Sometimes we do need to vent, but it's being mindful of the where, the when, the how, and when it's appropriate, where it's appropriate, how it's appropriate, right? Who's listening? What kind of impact do I want to make? The footprint, we talk about carbon footprint. Well, we make all kinds of footprints in life. What kind of footprint do you want to leave? Okay, you don't have to save the world. None of us can, nor is it our job to do so. However, we can impact our footprint and the environment that our footprint has or is in, right? So some people, that's just your family, your household. Other people, it's also your job or school or wherever you interact. Other people's footprints are larger depending on the roles that they have in life. And with that comes responsibility. But in any case, it starts with self. It really does. And your value is not determined by others. It's determined how you look at yourself. And not necessarily too much in ego, but that's another story. And I will go into ego on another day too, because ego is valuable. However, we need to be careful who's in the driver's seat, ego or higher self, right? But that's another topic for another day. In any case, I'm going to get off here. I hope you have a wonderful night, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, bye.